Before we begin, here's a quick disclaimer. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional mental health advice, diagnosis, or therapy. Nothing shared on this show should be taken as professional guidance. If you're struggling or feel you may be in crisis, please call 988. Reach out to a qualified mental health professional or someone you trust who can connect you with immediate support, or call 911 for emergencies. Enjoy the show. Welcome, everyone, to the Man Up Together podcast. My name is Alex Peskin, and I'm here with my lifelong friend and co-host, Bobby Jacobs. We're now moving on to episode 6 here. Today, we're going to talk about something we watched on Netflix, so I'm excited about that. But to start, there's just one thing I want to reflect on, because last episode, really great episode, it was such a meaningful conversation. You ended it by saying, I'm not sure how we can connect March Madness with grieving.
I've got an idea.
It
happened in the second round of the tournament.
In that same episode, I said something about the Gators got this, and they gave me a really good reason to grieve.
They did. It was a good game. They tried their hardest. First one seed to go out.
Yeah.
I think in a year where there's like 2 other 1 seeds that have made the Final Four.
And one of them made the Elite Eight, who didn't make the Final Four.
Yeah.
Want to keep going?
We can just keep talking through it.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, so I'm here for you. We can grieve. Well, you can grieve on your loss. I will listen.
Your Purdue Boilermakers did okay.
They
so that was fun.
They did good. Had a great run. Good game against Texas, which was really enjoyable to watch. Last second shot. The tournament this year has been really good. High Point beat Wisconsin, so that was fun to watch.
Yeah,
always.
true.
I feel like that was forever ago, right?
I know.
The first round always feels like it was forever ago.
Yeah, there were some good games, good endings.
Really good stuff. And so we're anyway. The tournament's been good. It's a good time to celebrate, and it's a good time to grieve. It's good, but hey, listen.
Thank you,
as I sit here,
Gators, for that connection.
As I sit here in my Florida State shirt, right? you guys, multiple championships. Yeah, 2 in a row. 1 last year.
Yeah,
the Gators have had a pretty good run.
I feel like you're just trying to invalidate my feelings of grief right now.
Absolutely.
Maybe that's
give me something. Give my Seminoles something. The 1 year where they had a chance, COVID, and then they canceled the tournament. So hey, it's a good thing. We love sports. Right? We'll always grieve about sports in some capacity.
All true.
Yeah.
Just one thing I realized maybe we should have told people sooner. I know some people watch this on YouTube, but most people listen on Apple or Spotify. And there are some times where we will say something where maybe we're referencing a visual. We don't usually have a lot of visuals, more in the ones where we're talking about a movie. But if you ever do want to see the visuals, you can watch it on YouTube. We also try and put a few of those up on Instagram.
There's a lot that goes into making us look presentable. So
yeah, a lot. Yeah. Maybe I should get a haircut before the next one.
So if you want to watch on video, but most importantly, listen, watch, however you do it.
Remember, all of the platforms.
Yeah.
Don't pick one. Try it on all of them.
What would be really fun is to watch it and try to sync up the audio on another platform at the same time.
Yeah.
2 birds with 1 stone. Give us a couple extra likes. So.
And this is about being together.
There you go.
But don't listen with anybody else, because we need them to listen separately on their own.
That's true. That's true.
Important things. All jokes aside.
Thank you to those that are listening, watching, sharing. I know I talked to my mom, actually, and she was talking about her husband sharing this with his family and friends. And I've got a work colleague that shared it with her husband. So I appreciate that. And so
my brother listened to the last episode at the gym.
At the gym, that's right.
He texted me, bad gym listen.
Yep.
He worked out so hard that his eyes sweat. It was good.
Yeah, it's a hard place to sweat from. So yeah,
thank you everyone who's supporting us. If you are a man, if you know a man, if you've heard of men, you should listen and share with somebody.
There's something for everyone.
There you go. Cool. All right. So today we've got a Why Do Men Like This?
Yep.
We are going to explore some things that we learned and thought about when watching Inside The Manosphere on Netflix this past week.
Louis Theroux documentary.
That's right. And we'll end with some mistakes, wins, and challenges, and we'll call it a day.
Let's do it.
Cool. All right. So for today's,
Why do I like this?
we are going to use a suggestion from Sarah, who wrote in, and she talked about something that she's been noticing going on with her son, but obviously goes on with
Men.
just about all men and boys. And it's the phenomenon of ragging on people, picking on people, poking fun at people in oftentimes, maybe not always, but in an attempt to bond.
Yeah.
And one thing that she said that like felt so real was this happens with tweens, teens, adults. It's
Everywhere.
all of
Everything.
us.
I think one of those, you learn to interact with people and you start to pick on other people, right?
Yeah.
And some level, obviously, it happens when you're young, and it can be a really uncomfortable thing when you're young and you don't understand it maybe. But I think the point of this conversation is why do we like this? Why do we do it intentionally to people that oftentimes we care about, or people that
Right.
oftentimes we're not intending to make them feel badly about themselves, or we're not intending to tear somebody down?
Maybe that's interesting though, because maybe it's not the main motivation, but I
Right.
wonder if that's
Still part
actually
of it.
fully true, that we
Yeah.
aren't intending for that.
Yeah.
It just may not be the primary. So yeah, let's actually talk about that fully. We're going to do why might this be positive, have some benefits, and what are maybe some of the drawbacks of it. So, why do men like this? Picking on each other to bond. One of the things I think about is it's trying to figure out how to connect, trying to figure out how to understand our social position
Yeah.
without specifically targeting emotion
Okay.
as the form of connection. We're not talking about something deep or serious. We're just picking on each other.
You're testing the water. Okay. I'm going to do something here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm going to bring in my expertise in horses. Ready for this?
Okay.
When you introduce a new horse into a herd, when I have a new horse and I'm going to toss out into a paddock, it's got a bunch of other established horses in there. Doesn't matter if it's 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. That horse tests the waters. It's going to go up and it's going to try to find another horse that makes it feel comfortable. And sometimes it's going to do that by biting at them, chasing them, kicking them in some cases. And it's going to test the waters to see where it can place itself to feel comfortable. And I wonder if as men, we do this sometimes, and whether it's an awkward situation, new people, new group, what have you, where we're going in there and we're going to test the waters, to your point, to see where that social hierarchy is. What can I say that's going to get a response? Doesn't have to be a good response, but what can I say that's going to get a response? Is it humor? Is it edgy testing? I don't know. So I think about this, like, meeting new people or figuring out your place, I think of it as this social hierarchy that exists across species. So anyway, I thought I was going to bring horse into it.
I like that a lot, because you're saying they're trying to find what will make them feel comfortable.
There you go.
But the more you're talking about what it means to feel comfortable, it sounds like you're saying, I need to know who I'm going to get away with kicking and biting and who I'm not.
Right.
And so you said there could be 6 horses already there.
Yeah.
It sounds like, and you help me if I'm not actually understanding this, it sounds like they might go up to and like bump and kick and bite a bunch of them and be like, all right, I found these are the 2 I can't. These are the 4 I can. So I fit in really nicely as third in this.
Nailed it. Yeah,
really?
I think that's the way that we sometimes do this in society, right? I think about my daughters, again, not men, boys, daughters, but they do the same kind of thing where they're trying to find their place on the playground. They're trying to find their place in the classroom. And I watch your kid at the gyms or the trampoline parks, those places, the places we take them to get sick, right?
Yeah.
But you watch it and you try to watch that social interaction happen. And so I see that, that bullying that can happen. And again, maybe there's all their bullying, right? But I see that prodding and pushing a little bit. I think one of the things I thought about this question from Sarah, I appreciate it, was, is this sometimes an opportunity for men to identify like-minded individuals around them? So is this a place
Are
for
we
me to
attempting at a
go?
benefit here? I feel like we could get into that.
But
But okay.
yeah, right.
Cool. So, because I think we kind of named the why
Yeah.
of it in some way, but now you're saying here's maybe something that could feel beneficial.
Yeah, it helps me to feel these are my people,
Okay.
or these aren't my people, which are both fair.
Right. If I crack a joke,
assumptions.
if I bring up a topic, if I do something slightly controversial,
Right.
and these people have a positive response to it, now I know here's my safe people.
Yeah. Can I go in and do I make a comment? Do I rag on you about your sports team? And how do you respond to that? Right. Or do I go and make a comment on a political something that happened, not because I necessarily care about it, but because I'm trying to gauge your response to it. So I'm going to, maybe twist that needle in you a little bit, or something to that regard. Or a lot of the times, again, not necessarily a good thing about this, right? But a lot of the times, we could potentially we rag on each other's physical appearances, or, hey, nice haircut, or whatever, whatever that is. And I think, again, from my perspective, it's a temperature gauge, and it's that opportunity to see where I fit, see where I fall.
So that's interesting, because it makes me think about, you were talking about the possible benefits and maybe coming into the downfalls of this, the negatives of this. Almost sounds like it could be based on motivation.
Okay.
Right. If you're bringing up something slightly controversial and you want to see who's going to pick up on it, and you're like, oh, this is someone I can have a meaningful conversation with, or who is really like-minded, and we can go down
whatever rabbit hole that leads you
inside the manosphere tunnels and things like that. Now I'm understanding that. But I wonder if the negatives of this could also be that there are some people, and maybe some topics, where we aren't necessarily trying to just find like-minded people, but who thrive off of a negative response.
Agreed.
I just saw somebody get uncomfortable. I just saw somebody get angry.
Yeah.
I just saw somebody get really sad. And I think sometimes there's a motivation to be able to create that experience in other people.
Yeah.
I would say maybe we're getting to a negative for this one, because the camaraderie side of it sounds very real. But then I don't know if everyone does this, maybe to some extent more than others, but there is that idea of, I want to get a response. It feels good for me to see you respond, even if I know the response you have means you don't feel good about it.
I agree. And I think the other part too that we have to remember is that some people aren't necessarily going to respond and be their genuine self. And so what I mean by that is, from a negative perspective, somebody may respond in a way that makes them feel comfortable in a situation that they are uncomfortable in. So they may agree with you on something they don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
They may support your comment,
or like take your abuse in some way.
Right. Or jump on the abuse of another person, right? So if you were, there's a group of 4 of us, right? And somebody were to come in and say, nice haircut, and I were to go, oh yeah, nice. Again, it makes other people feel comfortable.
Which horses can I bite and which ones can I not?
Right. So I think that from a negative aspect of this, yes, the camaraderie part of, okay, I'm going to get with my buddies and, we'll all rag on each other a little bit. But that's not always, I would argue, oftentimes, there's probably better ways to go about having that initial part of your conversation. I don't necessarily think there's a problem in ribbing each other a little bit here and there and having, but again, I think it needs to be somebody who is comfortable with you, you're comfortable with them, you understand what those boundaries look like. But I think it's also important to understand that boundaries do change, right? And so as we have those conversations, and as you see some of these things maybe playing out, having that internal dialogue with yourself of like, I need to maybe understand my awareness or my emotional intelligence in a situation like this. Again, it's a hard place, because like the question brought up, this happens at every stage of manhood, right? When we start this way and we finish this way.
Yeah. So. That's interesting though, because you're bringing up another point that makes me think of, when does this turn into bullying?
Yeah.
To some extent, this is okay. To some, it's not. You're saying, I wonder if part of the line as well is, what are we ragging on?
Yeah.
We rag on each other about our sports teams.
Right.
I don't know about how you feel, but I don't feel prepared ever to go play for one of my sports teams. I just love them.
I'm sure I could walk on anywhere and not compete.
Proud of your confidence
Right.
there. Yeah. So, right. I think there's levels of
Yeah.
things. If I say your team had a bad game, haha,
Right.
you didn't do that.
Right.
But if I'm talking about someone's appearance, something sensitive to somebody,
Mhm.
whether it's their appearance or performance when they're playing a sport or a grade they got in school
Right.
or anything that could be happening in their personal life, I feel like that becomes a little different. And maybe some people would argue, well, we have that dynamic in our relationship and our friendship where that's okay. I'd still argue, like, is that emotional safety or
Right.
not?
I like that
And
term, emotional safety. Never heard that one before, so I
Oh.
like that. It just because it's your emotional safety, but it's other people's emotional safety space, if you will. Anyway, I'm unpacking that
Yeah.
as you just said it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
Right? What feels good to you might not be creating safety in other people. And even if we
Yeah.
have this rule where we do rag on each other for something that we're sensitive about,
Right.
or you brought this up before, are we actually more uncomfortable saying, I don't like that rule anymore?
Yeah.
And we're just going to go with it? So it's something interesting to think about, right? Talking about people's characteristics or criticizing them for an action
Mhm.
that they do, we're getting closer to bullying.
Yeah.
And so one thing I want to ask you before we move on here, when you think of the negative side of this, I
Okay.
guess I'm calling it bullying. We'll just go with that. What do you think is the more effective way to deal with that?
Oof.
I'll give you two options.
Okay.
There's I have some sort of showing that I'm unaffected by it or I can roll with it. That's funny. Or like a face that says like you didn't impact me,
Mhm.
even though inside it might have. Or get good at sending it back.
I think depending on your stage of development, it might be easier or more challenging to do. Here's the one thing I'll say is I think the internalizing something that bothers me without verbalizing that it bothers me validates what's happening and potentially would allow that to happen again. And I think that as people get more comfortable, they push the envelope further. They push that line a little bit further. And if I don't step on my line and say, no, this bothered me, how you said that, you're like, nah, I don't agree with you. Or maybe you shouldn't say that, right? I think that just says, oh, the line's here, but maybe now the line is here the next time. And what does that feel like? And it can continue to roll. And so I didn't answer your question.
No, I think you did. I actually think you did. I consulted with an expert in the field.
Okay.
This someone who works with kids in this way on the front line, who I'm married to.
I never would have thought of that.
And she said the same thing. I thought it was different. My assumption is if someone is trying to pick on you,
Mhm.
they're wanting the feeling of a response. And if you don't give them the response, they're like, all right, that's a bummer. I'm out.
Interesting.
I'll go find somebody else. But she answered kind of similarly to you. To no, if you don't give a response, what you're actually saying is, now you've learned a thing you can do to me.
Right. I think
And-
no response is a response.
Yeah.
Is the
And
way
it's
that I
saying
kind of verbalize
you
it.
have permission to keep you said
Yeah.
that. You have permission to keep doing this. And so this is the dynamic I'm
Yeah.
teaching you about us. Then you said it in such a useful way for my brain. You said the more comfortable you get, the more you send it back.
Right.
You're saying, oh, if this person is comfortable to send it back to me, I'm learning my position here too. Sometimes I can bite the horse, but the horse actually sometimes turns around and bites me
Right.
back. So I have to think before I do it, do I actually want to get that bite back this
Yeah.
time or not? Because we're in a pretty even hierarchy.
And I think too,
position.
sometimes the audience matters. I think social hierarchy is a constantly changing and constantly kind of evolving dynamic between a group of friends. And something I always learn and I appreciated is when you get a new member of your team, you have a new team in total, right? So anytime you get a new member of that social hierarchy that comes in, everything shifts, everything
Yeah.
swirls. And so everybody's always trying to understand what other people's boundaries are, what are the things that set people off. And I think that the audience in that situation can sometimes be a really important part of that. And as I think more towards younger children, the people that your expert would be most familiar with, I think that there's this conversation, how people show up to their peers in school. I've heard the statement before of, yeah, this guy's lower on the totem pole, or he could be the punching bag of the classroom, and that hurts me inside to even make that statement.
Yeah.
But how does that manifest, and how does that come to be? I think maybe in some ways it comes to be because there's the person who doesn't push back enough or doesn't push back at all, and so
But that's an important
accepts
point.
it all.
Yeah, that's an important point. I'm realizing too, what you're saying is not only are you teaching this person how you can treat them,
Yeah.
you're also teaching the people who are watching. Oh, I was wondering where I was in the position. That guy can pick on him. Maybe I can pick on him too. And now more people are going to be like testing that person out to see, yeah, I'm above them. I feel better about my stature in the social hierarchy.
You know where else that happens? With horses too. Just to
Uh-huh.
bring it back to horses.
Yeah, I could imagine that.
But-
He's biting that horse.
Yeah.
I kind of want to bite a horse. I
Yeah,
want to bite
why
him
not,
too.
right?
Yeah, I'm above you
I don't have to
too.
wait for him to eat. I'm going to go over there and eat the hay anyways.
Ooh. That's interesting because then it makes me think too about what is the message here?
Mhm.
It's be careful what you teach other people, but then also be careful how you perpetuate the same problem, like how to stand up to a bully without becoming a bully, basically. Like,
What's that response look like?
Yeah, there's a fine line there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so-
What is that safe response? Again, ensuring that your values are upheld and your emotional safety is, I think, prioritized in that situation without sacrificing what you would be comfortable with doing to another person or saying to another person or something like that.
Do I have to sacrifice their emotional safety for my own? And I think the answer to that question does not always have to be yes.
Correct.
I like that a lot.
Correct.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, good
This is fun.
conversation.
Yeah, I like this. So again, if you got any more thoughts, if you disagree with us, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, that was good.
That's fun.
I imagine there could be maybe some whole episode topics that come from this.
Probably.
This at some point, but
Probably.
no, that felt like a really good conversation. Actually, thinking about what we are about to talk about, maybe there's a little bit of that does connect.
Sure.
So let's move into talking about Inside the Manosphere. We watched it on Netflix by Louis Theroux. He's a documentarian. He followed several subjects, I guess, who would be inside the manosphere.
I think it's important too, as we say this, we're not going to call out the names of the individuals that he interviewed and followed. It's a choice we're making. If you want to go watch the documentary, we urge you to do that, to understand what we're talking about. We've made the conscious decision that we're not going to call these individuals out by name, hopefully under descriptions of how they talk and act and work throughout the documentary. You'll be able to follow that. But anyway, wanted to call that out. We don't want to platform. We don't want to platform something that we don't agree with in that capacity. But again, I think it's important that we are now going to do an entire episode on something we disagree with, and we're going to do it hopefully with respect. We're going to do it with intention and purpose. I'm excited to
try hard on that.
Try hard and to get into this because it was very easy. As I watched the documentary, we write notes on these things. My first note was just WTF. I didn't really know how I was going to thoughtfully, articulate some of this. And I'm sure I'm going to be struggling with some of that as we go. Again, the opportunity to evaluate something with our thesis in mind of this man up together. And that's the lens that I think we're gonna look at this.
Right. Yeah. We're not here to put people down, just like we hope other people can feel safe to join with each other and disagree about things.
Yeah. So what's the thesis of this manosphere as you see it?
The thesis, I think, is the way society has positioned the idea of being a man has put men at a disadvantage. And we now have to fight back to regain our status as the
view of man that is within this manosphere. As we try to understand where this mindset is coming from, it helps to bring it all together. And so as I think about this manosphere, it's a mindset or it's an ideology that being a man is being challenged. And being a man doesn't look like what it is expected to look like. And society is attacking this, I would say in some ways, antiquated and appropriate view of manliness, this mindset of macho-ness, this mindset of and one of the parts of the documentary, they called it needing to be a hero.
Yeah. When they said that, I think the next sentence one of the guys said was, women don't actually want to be equal to men.
Right. Right. And I think one of the really interesting parts to me of this manosphere is the majority of the conversation was around not necessarily what men should be, but it's a conversation of what women should not be.
I think a good place for us to start will be making sense of these subjects, the influencers in the manosphere, and what might be common about them and what makes them thrive in that manosphere.
Yeah.
One thing that is very interesting to me is many of them, especially in this documentary, I did not do an extensive deep dive into the manosphere to make sure I'm really well versed on all of this. But at least in this documentary, there was a commonality that they were mostly raised by single mothers, some of them in traumatic upbringings, but most of them just without a male father figure in their life.
Without a person to show them what a man was and what a man wasn't, right? They have this gap in
Who is your role model?
what the role model, right?
Yeah.
And as we watch the documentary, there's a number of times where you see what are supposed fans of these people saying, "You are my role model," with those words exactly. I look up to you.
And there were two of them that they followed a little bit longer, who were probably in their like early 20s.
Yeah, I would agree.
But they were by far the oldest ones.
By
But there
far.
were some much younger supporters, and that's very interesting. I like that you started with the idea of the role model, because I think that's something that is so important not to lose in what all people's upbringings are. What do you see?
Yep.
And how does that teach you what is valuable and what is important? I think also in a space where there's a lack of clear role model, you're also probably in a space where there's a lot of survival, right? There should be role models in a child's life because there should be strong, steady adult figures who are taking care of them. So if there are not, that probably means a lot of your survival is on your own.
Yeah, there's a vacuum.
Yeah.
Right? And within, a vacuum by definition brings things with it. Right. And I think that vacuum doesn't necessarily mean it's just an empty space that sits there all the time. That vacuum brings along other things that require you, like you're saying, that's survival. But what is going to help me to survive? And it's going to be this influencers because they influence, right?
Right. But even these influencers had to learn a survival instinct growing up, right? There may not have been any influences in their life at a certain age, but they had to learn you have to be someone who can draw other people's attention. You have to be strong. Maybe it was on the playground, right? We could be talking about the same thing we were talking about before in Why Do Men Like This? You might have had to come home and take care of your siblings or make dinner for yourself, or you might have had a really sad or scary thing happen at school that day and you didn't have someone to talk to. So you learned, internalize that stuff. Strength is not talking about it. Strength is what you can do with your body.
Well, you said on the last episode where we talked about grief and we talked about trauma and traumatic experiences, you made the point that I loved of the degree to which trauma affects you is oftentimes because of the people around you and how they responded to you in that traumatic experience. In this situation, if these individuals didn't have the together person to experience that trauma with, what effect did that have on their outlook? What effect did that have on their mindset, their overall viewpoint, their ideologies, their values?
Yeah. So it makes a lot of sense that they came to an existence where they had to build those just based on what survival and success was going to look like for them. These guys, I think one of the main things I would say are salespeople.
Yep.
They're able to turn their ideas into viewers, and the more viewers you get, turns it into influence to make them buy things, and they're doing all of this in an attempt to make that money. But what you see, I think another part of these subjects, the influencers themselves, there is a really palpable insecurity.
Oh my gosh.
in
I was
all of
going
them.
to ask you, I was going to say, if you had to
Yeah.
pick one word to describe the individuals that we saw, I know that I watched the documentary with my wife. The first word that came out of, now she's a therapist also, the first word that came out of her mouth was insecurity, right? This is all
They're
based off of,
so insecure. To not talk badly about them,
Yeah.
I think some of that makes sense. If
Absolutely.
you grew up needing to survive and not having people who show you your value, that makes sense.
Yep.
And it is also palpable that insecurity just plays a major, major role in their life, in the way that they try and make their money, in the way that they structure their hierarchies in their lives. And there's one thing that I found very interesting in Thoreau's strategy in how he would interview them, or at least some of what they showed in the documentary, where he would bring things up what seemed pretty gently, and he would let them talk, and he'd ask some pointed questions. And then there were times where they would say something that probably someone would have an opinion about, and he would stand there. He would not put a judgmental face on, but he would just stand there
and wait
and be silent. And that's where I think the biggest insecurities started to come out. That's where they would fill the space with what they might have thought was in his head, or what they've heard in other people's responses to them. It became so palpable how insecure they were, because they couldn't sit in that silence with him without saying, now I have to defend myself. Now I have to protect the way I'm being seen. I have to come up with these ideas that will like kind of rebalance my feeling of power in that situation.
You said the way they're being seen. I think that's a big part of this, right? As I watch a documentary, all of the subjects of the documentary, biggest part of all of that was their presence on social media.
Yeah.
They utilize social media in the strongest way possible to promote their brand, themselves, their ideology, their values, all of the things. What's very interesting is they're very clear about the fact that they can, I don't want to use the word manipulate, but they can edit. They can clip farm. Right?
Clip farm. That was one of the phrases
That was
they
one of the
used.
phrases, right? It's like, I don't need this whole thing.
Well, he said to one of the guys, said, "Why did you say that?
Yeah.
Do you believe that?" He said, "I'm clip farming."
Exactly.
It's like saying things to get a 4-second clip that will hopefully get this many likes and this much
Because
engagement.
remember, you can put that 4-second clip out there without what happened
Context.
before,
Yeah.
without what happened afterwards, and that context is then built by the people that are watching it. Everything in these individuals' lives is filmed, oftentimes in multiple angles. You know, oftentimes they're even doing this live. There's this concept of constantly being filmed and constantly having to maybe put on a persona that may or may not be accurate, or at least fully accurate. You know, one of the individuals says multiple times, you know, call me whatever you want, you know, all the isms that you can see.
I don't care.
I don't care. I'm doing this for money.
Yeah. One of the subjects also, they talked to his girlfriend and said, "What do you like about him?" And she said, "Well, off camera, he's a really great guy." Right? There's that, I have to be this certain persona in front of the camera, but what you like about me is actually what nobody knows about me.
Yeah.
And so very inauthentic, I guess, in that as well.
Right.
We're talking about these deep insecurities that some of them have and the ways that those come out. And I want to now move into these people. They have these insecurities. They have these survival instincts. Who are they trying to influence? Yes. Who are they trying to make listen to their ideas or monetize, I guess, in some way? Because I think these two things actually connect quite a bit.
I would agree. What I'm going to say too is, who do they believe they're trying to influence, and then who are they actually influencing, right? At one point, Louis Theroux reaches out to one of the subjects and says, "Yeah, but your audience is mostly made up of 12 to 14-year-olds." And he's like, "No, absolutely not."
The metrics are the
I think
metrics.
Louis like brought the receipts, right? And it was like,
Yeah.
no, right? And so I think there's this concept of who the individuals think they're trying to influence, right? And I think they're trying to influence like-aged, like-minded people that look like them, people that, exist in the same type of sphere, if
Right,
you
like
will.
mid-20s,
Maybe people that are pre or right at the beginning stages of their career, figuring out what they want to do. Maybe people that are pre or right at the beginning stages of a long-term relationship or coming out of a long-term relationship. One of the individuals that they highlighted in the show as not necessarily one of the influencers, but one of the fans of them was a young man, again, who we believe was right around that age
Probably
group, 20 to
20s.
30s,
Yeah.
right? Who had come off of some hard luck, as he called it. At one point he's, mentioned that he was homeless, living in his car. People that are vulnerable. Right. And I think that mindset of vulnerability, maybe people that are down on their luck, people that don't believe that they can succeed, people that just came out of a long-term relationship.
And people who are young and don't have
They're not
set in
formed,
ideas yet of what their role models are and what it means to them.
Yeah. And these people are filling that gap of, I don't know what it is to be a man, but this guy, he's got the looks, he's got the money, he's got the success, he's got the relationships, if you want to call it that.
That's what they show. They show the vacations and the cars and the boats and the women who are dressed very scantily.
Right.
And when you're 14 years old, your body tells you, I like all of these things.
Right.
You don't have to decide and think about it. That's vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right. You're finding these people who are so malleable,
right,
and telling them this is what success looks like.
Yeah.
And then the people who are down, who know it's going to be a long ride back up. If someone tells you, look at my success, just follow me and do this quick thing, you're going to be great.
Right.
Obviously, something exciting for me when I was listening, they were talking to the two guys who were probably in their 20s. And he says, like, what is the message that they sent? And the first thing he said was like, man, and that then he asked him again, he said, what do you say? And one of the guys goes, man up. And I was like, exactly, man up, because that's what we're doing. We're trying to make sense of what does that phrase actually mean?
Yeah.
This is what the phrase traditionally means. Man up means just make it happen, no matter who you have to step on the way there, no matter how inauthentic it is to you. Just, it was nut up or shut up.
Nut up or shut up.
It was not BS up. And that's the message that we're trying to kind of mess with here with Man Up. We're trying to say, what if manning up is something you can do together where you're actually taking account of why is this hard for you? Why does this impact other people? How can this be something that is good for everyone around you?
Yeah. So what I hear is this concept of man up, of ignore your values, ignore what's important to you, and do whatever it takes to succeed. Now, succeed can look however it looks.
Yeah.
But it should look like this, guys, right? It should look like scantily clad women and expensive cars and expensive condos and lots of money and drinking and drugs and parties and
aggression. I feel like is a part
right?
of
And I think we're going to get into this pretty deeply, but it's misogyny and homophobia and racism and anti-Semitism and
but also a lack of acknowledgement that mental health is a thing.
Absolutely.
In one of the same conversations, they're asking one of these guys about his trajectory where he was living in his car, and they were saying, "Oh, we don't believe in depression." Sounds like the Manosphere does not believe in depression. You have all of the tools you need. And then they say, then my brother died recently. So, what happened to your brother? He took his own life. I don't want to make any assumptions, but generally that comes from depression.
Right. The two are oftentimes related.
And what a hard place to be stuck. I don't believe in this thing. And it's also the reason that I'm struggling. You have all of the tools at your disposal to succeed. I think in some ways is trying to inspire, you can do this.
Right.
And I think it's completely invalidating people's experience because it's not just tools you need to succeed. If if the chemistry of your body makes it hard to have energy in the ways that other people do, it doesn't matter what tools you have. If you're isolated and have no support, those are tools that I think they don't name in that you have all the tools you need.
Yeah, I would say there's a good amount of cognitive dissonance that exists in the manosphere.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you a question, right? As someone in the mental health profession, a lot of the individuals that we saw, the subjects, physically, at least outwardly, appeared to be very healthy. They were muscular, they were tan, they appeared, and again, I'm not making any assumptions about these individuals' health. I don't know what their health is. They physically appeared to be healthy. And at one point, one of the subjects actually talks about what's important to him in life is money and health. But what you just said is mental health. I would love your opinion on the societal views of health and mental health, and why do we separate them? Is health always when somebody mentions health, is it always encompassing not only a physical health, but also a mental health? How are we uncoupling those? Anyway, talk to me about that a little bit.
I think that's very traditionally been a struggle.
Yeah.
Because one of them you can see really clearly, and one of them you cannot, however connected they are, however important the invisible one is. When you look at someone, you can guess with more accuracy how physically healthy they might be, how often they go to the gym, what their genetics make their body look like, right? Again, like, is that actually health? If it's just like what your body is going to look like. But there's also a lot of value placed on the visual aesthetic of ourselves in our society. I would say more so for women, but for men, it also is. And
well, the manosphere, to bring it back this just really quickly, the manosphere is one of the, I would say, pillars almost, is your outward physical appearance, right? Your physical health.
Yeah, I don't remember the question that got them to this in the documentary, but Louis Theroux said to one of them, "What do you think about me?" And he like looked at me and said, "Did you just look at my arms?"
Yeah.
And
it
he
was
like,
in the beginning.
I'm trying to size you up.
Exactly. Right?
Yeah. He didn't say, well, have you been to therapy? How long has your most successful relationship been? How do you feel when your kids
how do you feel about
sick?
your emotional health?
Right? They said, well, I'm looking at your arms. I want to see that. And that, I think that's an easy way to be able to try and gauge health. I think what they're doing also is they're trying to feel in control and feel in power and feel like things are easier. So it makes sense that this is the way they want to gauge health, because mental health is a little bit more elusive for most people. It's really hard to say, well, if you do step 1 and step 2 and step 3, you get to step 4 of your mental health. There's so many more moving parts, and there's a stigma of you don't talk about it. You man up. And that, I think, in our society is shifting in a meaningful way for a lot of people. I think it is becoming easier, safer.
I definitely hear more people say, I can't take a meeting today because I got to go to therapy, or I've got counseling or whatever. And that's, I would say, in the last 5 years, I don't know that I've heard that or I've seen that, people being as comfortable saying that.
Yeah, awesome. I think in some ways it's moving in the right direction. And I think that's a part of the thesis of the manosphere as well, is we don't like the way things are changing. And so we're trying to bring them back. And so it makes sense that they're moving away from, like, depression doesn't exist. Go to the gym and have big muscles, and that will matter more. And there's such a disconnect in that when, again, I would argue the more you can focus on your mental health, the more physically healthy you could be, but also working on your physical health can work on your mental health. They're so nicely connected that it's a shame that they kind of cut off the bridge sometimes.
I mean, I had a, just as a personal story, right? After I hurt my back, I have been, continue to be really scared about getting back on my bike and exercising in the way that I used to. I just, there is a mental blockade, an aspect, whatever you want to call it, that is challenging me from a physical perspective to do something for my physical health. I've had this definite shift in thinking over the past number of years of, like, health is health, physical, mental, I don't care what it is. You go to a different doctor for your feet than you do for your brain. In my opinion, there's no reason to separate that physical and the mental health. Health is health.
Mhm.
And I think that there's an opportunity for us to think about that altogether. So anyway, I
Yeah,
just wanted
well,
to,
I like that though. I want to use your example for a minute because you're saying there's this thing I used to love to do.
Mhm.
Now that my body hurts, I'm afraid that if I go and do that again, it's going to
Gonna
hurt
hurt
me
again.
again.
Yeah.
You're sitting here and you're talking about it right now. And you also happen to be talking about it with someone who cares about you, who has recently gotten into bike
Get on
riding.
your bike. Yeah.
And now I'm sitting here going, oh, maybe we should talk more about this because maybe something that can help you is for me to say, Bobby, should we go out on a short bike ride
Right.
together? Right? You don't have to just build up your courage and decide I'm going to do this and go on a 40-mile bike ride, something I've never done. And I'm just going to be okay. It's like
Yeah, no, I
build
think,
up that confidence by
right.
having someone next to you.
And I think to bring it to the manosphere again, that doesn't exist.
Oh no.
It's a
Hey, there's this thing I'm worried about.
right. Like
No way.
you don't show that vulnerability. I think what's very interesting to me about this manosphere is this complete lack of being able to show vulnerability. That is a weakness, period. End of statement. Stop
Mhm.
right there. However, the people that are most attracted to this, like we talked about, are some of the most vulnerable people that are there.
Yeah.
They may or may not recognize it within themselves as to why I am or am not attracted to this mindset, but there is a definite correlation, in my opinion, between vulnerability and your desire to enter the manosphere and be a part of the manosphere,
Yeah.
if you will.
Right. So that's a great point. So we just talked about the first two parts of this, right? We talked about how there are certain reasons that these influencers have become interested in becoming an influencer in the manosphere.
Yep.
That insecurity and possibly trauma background and lack of role models. We then talked about who are the people that like to watch them,
Mhm.
right? The people who have some sort of vulnerability and are catching on because, look, this is what success can be like,
Right.
or this is what it's like for us to be able to feel excited by what could come next. Before we put those two together, I actually want to go into talking a little bit about how they look at women.
Okay.
Because there's a lot to talk about there.
Lot to unpack.
So let's actually unpack that
Perfect.
a little bit for now.
And I think maybe this is a good place to talk about the misogyny that's pervasive through this manosphere.
Mm.
But one of the things that we heard multiple of the subjects, if not all of them, say, people say I hate women, but in fact, I really love women. And it's well, do you
What
love
does that look like?
women? Do you love the idea of women? Do you love the sexual exploitation of women?
Right.
Do you love what you
power,
perceive to
yeah.
be of value in women? Do you love, like you said, your power over women? I would argue that telling women their purpose and telling women their place and the comments around women want whatever and you
Women don't know,
dictating
right?
that.
Women don't know what they want. That's why we
Yeah.
need to tell them as men.
I would argue that's not a love of women in any way, right? We live in a world where people were alive during the women's suffrage movement when women couldn't vote. We've come very far in a lot of ways. And now we have this mindset in this manosphere of that's not good. So you made a really good point. I want to let you make it of why maybe that's a driving factor in some of this, of how these men are maybe viewing this as their way of life being at risk. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So when they talked about the beliefs that they have, what kept coming back for me is this idea of women basically having too much power
Mm-hmm.
over men, and that was uncomfortable for them. And the way that I see that is traditional values say the man is in charge, head of the household, makes the money, and
Provides.
right, and provides. And
Provides, I would say, physically, because the mental and emotional.
right, emotional
Yeah,
didn't matter
right.
for a long time.
Mhm.
And that's something that's now shifting. You brought up women's suffragist movement was a while ago, but since then, I feel like the trajectory has been able to progress
Mhm.
where women can not only vote now, but they have the ability to go to universities as much as men, get as good of jobs, start to get paid in similar ways to men, and women have taken up those opportunities as they very well should have. And many of them are starting to thrive.
It elevated their position in society.
Yeah. And so now they're in this place where it's probably, I don't want to speak as if I truly know this, but where it's probably different to go through the process of picking a mate. In order to survive, you needed to have someone who put a roof over your head, and maybe that was it. And it's progressed since. Now women can put a roof over their own head. They don't need to have someone who's going to put food on the table. They don't actually need someone who can help them raise children,
because they have helped to shape society.
And we are talking just about heterosexual relationships right now. Of course, there's a lot of other dynamics at play, and there are a lot of other types of relationships. I want to just be careful. But now these women who do want to be with a man, women who are successful don't necessarily not want to be with a man. Many of them do, but they can pick their mate differently. They don't need to pick someone just because of how they can be provided for. They might now be able to broaden what they want from a man, like someone who can have an intellectually stimulating conversation with them, someone who can have a sense of humor, someone who can be thoughtful and kind and careful with their emotions, which, again, I don't want to presume I know exactly what it was like to pick a mate back then, but was maybe much lower on the checklist because there were these other values that were so important. And now that we can do that for ourselves, maybe we deserve to be respected and cared for in deeper ways. And I think that that's probably threatening to lots of men who aren't thinking carefully, who aren't curious about how positive that might be for other people, and just saying, well, I mean, if we really reduce it all the way down, well, that means now it's harder for me to have a partner. I don't have as many choices if I'm not going to be thoughtful about what I'm going to have to think about how other people feel and be kind to them and spend time with them in more meaningful ways. And that is threatening old traditional values.
And so there's one of a few ways you can go about it. If you're threatened by that, is you can be threatened by it and try to push back to where things were.
Or blame. You named that before as well, where so much of what they're doing is finding a blame. Or other people are doing this to us.
Or alternatively, we can, what is it, like rising tides lift all boats. You can elevate everything. You can elevate society. You can elevate yourself. Oh, I'm not as attractive to this individual anymore because they don't need me for my financial benefits. So what else am I going to bring to the table? And I think that is what the manosphere is vehemently against,
afraid of,
right? And they make the statement that men are born without value, therefore you have to build your value. In my opinion, a completely ridiculous statement. I think everybody is born with value of who you are, your ideals, your ideas, your values, all the things. But they are very clear that they believe that women are born with value in their physical appearance, their beauty, they make a very definitive statement of women are born with breasts and a vagina, and therefore that's their value to society. We'll put that one aside because it's just ridiculous. Women are not a sum of their physical parts. But again, that is the thesis of this manosphere of, I don't have value, I have to build my value, therefore here are the 5 steps that you're going to take to build that value. And in taking those 5 steps, we are going to knock down everybody in our path to get there. Women being the big tool that we're going to use to do that. I mean, multiple times we hear from multiple of these subjects of this concept of one-sided monogamy. I heard that when I was watching it. I didn't process it the first time. Thankfully, it comes up multiple times in the documentary because, I mean, monogamy by definition is not one-sided. Literally is just it's just a definition, but it's this concept of I can do what I want because it's what I need. It's because it's what I want. Forget what I need. You better not. You
Right.
have to adhere to these rules, to these ideals. You have this singular purpose, and therefore one-sided monogamy.
Right. And so I think in those types of relationships, you're finding women who maybe can be manipulated into that idea.
Well, it
or
makes you wonder
some
what.
of them might like that idea, but it could be from past trauma. I think one of them said, well, I had exes who cheated on me all the time. At least he's telling me, right?
Right.
So he has raised the bar from my exes
Right.
to
Right.
one rung up without saying, well, there's actually a few rungs up there above that as well, where maybe you don't deserve to be cheated on.
Right.
And it could just be okay to be honest and open and
I mean, we talked
two-sidedly monogamous.
We talked about the vulnerable population. I think, again, I'm not to speak for any of these women. I think that, again, though, these men do attract the same followers as they do men, some of the women, where these are vulnerable women that may have been in a bad situation. They may have been in an emotionally or physically abusive relationship where you said you can raise the bar an inch, but you've raised the bar.
Right. But then there's also women they probably are with and their tactics don't work. And then those relationships don't last. And they probably don't blame that on something that they could learn about themselves. It's just like there's something wrong with them.
Yeah. And then there's a wholesale view of women. Right? There's one of the individuals on the subjects that we talk about, and he, I don't even know what the term means, but he manages OnlyFans accounts, which again, I have no idea what that term
like
actually
probably
means.
like under a brand or something.
Right. And however, when he's asked about OnlyFans, he looks down upon it. When he's asked about pornography, he calls it quote unquote loser shit.
He said, if my daughter did that, I would disown her.
Right. And so again, cognitive dissonance, right? This complete, removal of your values from what you're externally portraying. And I think that's part of this manosphere concept. But again, if you continue to remove your values, that becomes your value,
right?
And that becomes who you are and what you're portraying, in that regard. But the other thing we saw too, we talked about misogyny. There's a lot of hate. I think there's a lot of pervasive hate that we see throughout this, and it's hate of anybody who is believed to be pushing you down and keeping you down, right? There's this continual conversation around there's a group in society that is working to keep everybody down so they can continue to elevate themselves.
Well, a cabal.
Yeah, the evil cabal, right?
There's the Matrix, there's the red pill. There are a lot of different terms like that.
And so what's so scary to me about that is you have these vulnerable people that are being influenced, yet they may be influenced in a way that is horrendous and is hurtful. We heard a lot of anti-Semitic tropes and anti-Semitic conversations as directly as F the Jews being chanted on a live cast to the more kind of indirect, Jews control the mainstream media, the banks, all of the anti-Semitic things that we've heard for generations and generations that, led to horrible things. And I think that first off, there's no place for hate, in my opinion, in any of this whatsoever.
Well, I think it's even bigger than that, right? There is no place for hate. They are getting more likes and clicks, and they're getting a stronger reputation for these things. But the things that they're getting that reputation for, this hate, are dangerous. And so I actually want to move into our last part of this real quick. So now let's talk about how they put all of this together. These are insecure people who have learned to survive in the world by taking advantage of the way people see them. We have vulnerable people who are saying, wow, this looks really great. And it's a lot of men, and we're putting women down, and we're putting other populations down. You just talked about anti-Semitism as well. And so how do they actually become successful? I want to talk about, I think what you're starting to center around, you're talking about it with OnlyFans, talking about it in other ways as well, is exploitation.
Yep.
These people are becoming master salespeople, manipulators of the algorithms and the clicks in order to exploit vulnerable populations, in order to have their businesses thrive, right? One thing you just brought up is they have OnlyFans brands, but also, at least this one particular person completely disagrees with the idea of OnlyFans.
Right.
And they have classes with
Yeah.
these other
It's like a
people in the
university,
manosphere
right?
who
Yeah.
are-
Some of the original guys in the
Yeah.
manosphere that, again, not platforming them.
Right.
And so, but it's interesting, right? When you go, one of the things they do is they make money by signing these individuals up for these classes, these university, this training. I think they use the word
Yeah.
multiple times, teaching, what is one of them, teaching boys how to be boys, right?
Yeah.
I shudder to like think about what is within these classes, what's
Yeah.
within these messages. But again, it's exploiting that population. And what I think
Right.
Louis Theroux actually asked, like, what does it cost? Right.
Right.
And they said there was multiple levels of membership. Who knows what you get with these levels? I don't want to know. And they're not cheap. We're not talking about
Right.
$5 a month here. $50, $60, $80 a month for some of these things. And then there was the other one. A lot of these subjects talk about investing. Right. That's
Yes.
a big part. Do what I do. There's one, he would wake up in the morning and show his,
I just made $10,000 this morning.
a supposed receipt. You have no idea what this receipt says. Who knows what it is? But it's that easy. I don't understand why you're not doing this, right? Do what I do. And Louis Theroux actually does. He deposits £500 or something into one of these accounts. And at the end of the documentary, he looks at it and he's got supposedly done everything that this subject has done.
So
And
like
he's got $160 left or whatever it is. And it's like, no, that's not how that works.
And right, they're exploiting people.
Yeah.
They're saying, come be excited by this. Come look at my lifestyle
Right.
where I am on this yacht or in this mansion and drive this sports car and have all of these naked women around
Right.
me. And so obviously you should do what I do because that's what's going to get you there.
Yep.
Come invest in this thing that I get a cut in when you deposit money. Come pay monthly fees for these classes that we do. And even just engaging on their platforms. I think one of them is a gambling platform.
Yeah. Well,
that
most, I
he's
mean,
on.
they're the advertisements that are there. There was the one where Louis saw, he's like, yeah, the video was up with a online gambling profile or something, advertisement attached to
Right.
it. Right. So, yeah.
And he's also showing this is what success can look like. Also, you could just go to my OnlyFans site and make me money there too, even though what he said, he thinks of it as losership.
Right.
Right. They don't actually believe fully what they're doing.
Right.
I am saying, here's how I can help you thrive. Here's how I can help you man up, level up, be successful. I don't actually care your outcome as long as something in that outcome involves me making money off of you. And so now they are attracting 12, 14, 20-year-old vulnerable people to grow up in this manosphere that doesn't have their best interests in mind because they're not teaching them how to attract successful women. They're not teaching them how to maybe invest their money safely if they have money to invest.
Right.
Good for them if they do at that age.
Right.
They're not teaching them to think critically about how we impact the other people in our lives.
So can we unpack that per se? Right.
Yeah.
I think there's the exploitation of the mind. One of the last individuals that they interview identifies himself as a conspiracy theorist. And I think that conspiracy aspect of this is pervasive. The only way conspiracy theories grow is when you can influence a vulnerable person to continue to
fear,
to go with that. Right. And so there's a lot of conspiracy theory generated by some of this. And I think that oftentimes, not going to say every time, but oftentimes those conspiracy theories can be very dangerous because of the people that are associated with them, because of the broad hatred that's applied. Again, whether it's anti-Semitism, misogyny, homophobia is a big part of this as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that some of these conspiracy theories can be incredibly, incredibly dangerous, but this manosphere is platforming them. This
Mhm.
manosphere is giving them a place to say, nope, this is legitimate. These individuals, from my opinion, a lot of them are very well spoken. And if you say something with enough conviction, it's
People
true,
will believe you.
right? And
Yeah.
so I think that there's this exploitation part of it, of this vulnerable, growing, and literally in some cases biologically developing brain, and that conspiracy aspect can be really challenging. There was the one individual at the end who had been deplatformed from all the major platforms, although then he said he was still allowed on X, which I would consider to be a pretty major platform.
It makes sense though.
Pretty
If you're
major
only allowed
deal,
on one.
right? But then he was allowed back. I think we can probably all have these conversations around censorship and what have you. Again, that's for other people to maybe discuss, and for us at a different time to discuss. But I would argue that conspiracy theories and hate are not somewhere that the vulnerable population should be kind of driven towards. And I believe the manosphere drives people
Right.
towards that.
I think in some ways it is exploitation. Conspiracy theories, their energy comes from fear.
Yeah.
If we create enough fear, you'll
Yeah.
believe these things
Right.
so that you can be prepared for whatever is coming next. It's exploiting people's fear with that. It's exploiting people's biology by exposing young men to this idea of the sports cars and the sex and all of it. It's exploiting our mental health when it comes to gambling and getting rich and ideas of, if I don't feel valuable, you can help me blame that on somebody else. It's all
Yeah.
exploitation.
That blame part of it, I think, is a big one. There's a lack of any type of ownership.
Mhm.
Nobody takes responsibility in the manosphere, because it is always, my failures are due to somebody else's whatever, their actions. It's not my shortcomings. It's not my mistakes. It's somebody else caused this to happen and caused me to fail, and therefore I can blame somebody else.
Mhm.
And therefore the world is out to get me. The world is against me. The world was built against me. And in so many ways, the world was built by these people to benefit these people,
Right.
right?
And these people are also bullying other people. There's a part of it where one of the guys walking on the street with Louis Theroux, and he's basically picking on him and
Yeah.
bullying him and putting
Well,
him down. But exactly what you're talking about is he's putting someone down so
Right.
he can feel like he goes higher. There's this guy who's asking me hard questions
Yeah.
and he's poking holes in my ideas. And so if I make fun of him for the way he punched the
Oh, the punching,
bag in the arcade, and I know I'm strong, I'm recentering myself on the top of the hierarchy.
There's a
here.
control aspect,
Yeah.
right? And it's a control of every aspect of their lives. At the end, Louis Theroux is back, and it seemingly, now it may be based on editing, it doesn't matter,
Sure.
but seemingly Louis Theroux has the upper hand in a conversation.
Oh.
And very quickly, one of these subjects brings up the Israel-Palestinian conflict without any context, without any
Just like trying to
indication,
gotcha him.
and gotcha him, because we're talking about someone else, and all of a sudden we bring up
Yeah.
this
Now
situation,
Now I feel strong
and
again.
he took
Yeah.
back control. He took back
Yeah.
control of that conversation. So
Right.
again, I think that, it's this mindset of control in every aspect. It's this mindset of blame. It's the mindset of, gotta throw the hate word in there too.
Yeah, it's for
So
sure. It's anything that can get attention,
Yeah.
because what they really want is attention, so
So,
that you'll buy their
I think
stuff.
that's the currency that's most
Yeah.
important.
If we can get as many people to buy our stuff as possible, and as many vulnerable people to see there's value in buying our stuff,
Yeah.
then we're going to be okay, even if those people aren't okay. And that's
Wraps it
what
up
they're trying to.
perfect.
Maybe that's where we
I
wrap
love it.
this up.
Yeah, that wraps it up
Yeah.
perfect. So suffice it to say, we don't agree with a lot of the commentary of the
Yes.
manosphere. I would say that the good thing, in my opinion, I never heard of the damn manosphere before this episode. Again, I'm not maybe the one who's up and up on all the social things in the world.
Sure.
I'm also not
Same.
13 years old on YouTube,
Right.
in my room, on my computer, or on my phone. And so I think that it's scary that this is out there. In my opinion, I think we should do this type of thing where we're critically evaluating something. The goal here was not to attack any of these subjects as people. I think it's well within our purview, and
it's to think critically about the idea of what's going on. Yeah.
I would say watch the Inside the Manosphere. I think it's a good insight into definitely what we're talking about today.
Yeah. I like what you said though in the beginning though as well. Tell us what you agree with. Tell us what you disagree with.
Yeah.
We're sitting here talking about something where we disagree with a lot of the ideas.
Yeah.
We could have missed some really important things, or you could think very differently from us and just see things a little bit differently, and it would be great for us to be able to hear those voices.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very similar
make sense of it.
Background in a lot of ways. So we have a lot of the same privileges, a lot of the same mindsets. And so if you don't have those,
we raise a bunch of girls. And so if you raise a boy, a man, and there are things that are coming up for you that we wouldn't have thought about because we haven't truly had to think about it in our homes with our children, definitely share that with us as well, because I think that would be really cool to be able to hear a little bit about that. But
I love that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for listening to that part of it in a way that there's room for curiosity. So now let's move into mistakes, wins, and challenges. So the mistake this week, someone we did mention, I think it was in episode 3, a little bit when we were talking about sports. Tiger Woods was arrested, and they believe it was for a DUI.
Mm-hmm.
And in some way, that is its own mistake. The man made a mistake.
Allegedly,
I have this struggle with people with that amount of money driving in any way.
Yeah.
But maybe he needed some space and some time alone, and that's fine. But I like to think, if I were ever in the situation where I have that much money, I'll have someone who can drive me around.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. The real mistake, though, for me, the way that this came up was when I started to hear some of how people reported on this. I think it was maybe some ESPN reporters or other people. So maybe it wasn't reporters. It was
analysts,
people who talk about things. And some of what they said...
So quick to judge.
Yeah, some of what they said is judgment. Yeah. They're saying, what is wrong with him? Why would he do this? He's supposed to be better than that. I think what we're missing in this is the human aspect of this man is obviously struggling. Right. He's been struggling for a long time. Unbeknownst to us, he was probably struggling for years before that. And he's still not okay. And I think it's important to hold people accountable for their decisions and their actions.
Yeah, to be clear, we are not condoning if he was under the influence of anything that would
or he also got in a crash. Be more careful when you crash.
Yeah, not condoning that. We know that there is a history of issues with driving under the influence with Tiger Woods, but there's also
What about naming the other side? This man is struggling. He has not received enough help. He does not have enough support in his life. Maybe he does not know how to ask for it or receive it either, which is fair, but also not necessarily fully his fault. That's the kind of the point. Like, we always need to be figuring out how to do better together. He might need to do some man up together, work on this one, but I want to be careful. That's, I guess, the mistake is I want to learn from this to be more careful in how we talk about people who are struggling. Of course, we should be held accountable for our actions and our decisions. And it should also be acknowledged that there's a reason for this that doesn't make it okay, but makes it important to name as well. So
agreed.
That's what
it's a good for that. Good mistake.
Okay. Okay. All right, Bobby, give us a win here.
All right, we'll do a win. We're going to go back to March Madness. It's a great time of year to go to wins.
Come on.
If anybody was watching, I guess at the time of filming this past weekend, Duke UConn, really, really wonderful game, really competitive, and an ending that we're going to remember for a long time. Young freshman, 19 years old, and Braylon Mullins with the 3-ball to win it from 35 some odd feet. I mean, it was
a big one.
It was a shot, and so got to give him the win. That was, the guts to take that shot, the guts to feel confident in taking that shot. You won the game. You're going to the Final Four. Braylon Mullins, UConn with the win. Congratulations. Love to see it.
Yeah.
So our challenge for the week.
Yeah. So our challenge here is a little bit of something we tried today.
Yeah, a little retrospective challenge.
That I think we'd like to continue to try. To be transparent, we talked about this before starting the episode. We want to talk about something that we don't agree about a lot of the things that are being brought up. Can we do that in a way that shares these thoughts, is thoughtful, shows some curiosity, some interest in learning and making sense of things? Because we don't agree with this. And I think it could have been very easy for us to get really passionate, really angry, really loud. And what?
That first response, that WTF response could have been the what we did for an hour here. And I
imagine, we haven't played this back yet. I imagine there could be some moments in this episode where you did see that some of our emotion was coming up because of our disagreement with this. And I think the challenge still stands as being so important. When you disagree about something, can you talk about it in a way where you're wanting to hear someone else and wanting them to make sense of what you're saying? Because it's so easy to just try and overpower someone and ignore someone and push away their ideas. But if you say yours louder and if you say yours more confidently, you're going to be right. That's a hard thing to do, but it doesn't actually it's not discourse when you're doing that. It's just you're shouting louder than each other. And so I hope my challenge for us is to maybe continue to try and get better and better at that.
No, I agree. I mean, we reviewed, during our sports episode, a book that we didn't necessarily agree with all of it. Maybe we'll find something we do agree with here a little bit to analyze and to talk about. So yeah, I love it. Mistake win challenge. Again, if anybody has any mistakes, wins, or challenges that they want to share with us, would love to hear them. Would love to talk about them. Again, please watch, listen, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Again, we're on video. So please share with us on Instagram. Your wife does a great job with our Instagram presence. So thank you for that. And then questions at manuptogetherpodcast.com if you've got anything you want to share with us via email. But with that, this has been great. Enjoyable.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you next week so that we can continue to man up together.
The Man Up Together podcast was produced and edited by Alex Peskin and Bobby Jacobs. Special thank you to our wives, family, friends, and coworkers who have supported us in so many ways throughout this process. You can find us on Instagram at Man Up Together Podcast, and you can email us at questions@manuptogetherpodcast.com. If you are interested in joining us on this journey, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone you care about. Thank you for listening. See you next week.